returns. Okay. Another great article in The Intercept by Glenn Greenwald talking about endless war, or the 30-year war, as you're going to see why that's the case in a second. He talks about how we had actually known about this back in 2012. We've, of course, known about it for a long time. We're told about the war on terror, and then President Obama came in and said, oh, no, we're going to end that kind of talk, and we're going to get out of Iraq and Afghanistan. But in reality, behind the scenes, the administration had been planning to stay in war for a long time, as we're about to prove. That's why we go back to 2012 and get a quote from the Washington Post during an article they were writing about the disposition matrix. That's the matrix where they decide if they're going to kill you or not based on signature that they're getting from your cell phones or other things that they're picking up. And there's a little matrix, oh, look at that, you're dead. Okay, and they drop the drone strikes on you. But in this case, we find out something more important about the macro picture of war. Here's a quote. Among senior Obama administration officials, there is a broad consensus that such operations are likely to be extended at least another decade. Given the way al-Qaeda continues to metastasize, some officials said no clear end is in sight. That timeline suggests that the United States has reached only the midpoint of what was once known as the global war on terrorism. Now remember, that's before ISIS takes off. That's in 2012. That's as President Obama is bragging about getting out of Iraq and how we're going to get out of Afghanistan and we're going to wind these things down. No. Internally, they're talking about at least another 10 years. That means all of Obama's term and well beyond that. Okay? Well, he's not the only one saying that. Now, there were some committee hearings in 2013, and we go to Greenwald's description of that. In May 2013, the Senate Armed Services Committee held a hearing on whether it should revise the 2001 authorization to use military force. A committee member asked a senior Pentagon official, Assistant Secretary Michael Sheehan, how long the war on terror would last. His reply, at least 10 to 20 years. At least. A Pentagon spokesperson confirmed afterward that Sheehan meant the conflict is likely to last 10 to 20 more years from today, atop the 12 years that the conflict has already lasted. That's during the Obama administration. That's not Rumsfeld, that's not Cheney, that's not Bush. That's the Obama administration saying, oh, absolutely. Let's keep that war machine revved up. Let's keep going to war, endless war. We've always been at war. So Spencer Ackerman then pointed out, well, if you do the math on that, that sounds like a 30-year war. Well, he's not the only one saying it. Another guy that was inside the Obama administration is Leon Panetta. He was the Secretary of Defense. What did he say? Quote, I think we're looking at kind of a 30-year war. Well, I mean, 30 years is so far out, again, 20 years from now, that basically they're saying war is indefinite. We will, because Leon Panetta, honestly, but likely won't even be alive in 20 years, right? Because President Obama won't be in office. It'll be not just another administration, it'll be many administrations from now. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or it's a Republican, it's a liberal, it's a conservative. No. Washington establishment has decided we're going to have a 30-year war and everybody's going to get stinking rich. Now, of course, you're not. Maybe your son or daughter might go get killed in one of those wars. And maybe we, for example, invade Iraq and stir up a hornet's nest, and all of a sudden, voila, look at that, there's ISIS. And now we've got to go fight them. And that kills many more people in the Middle East and also our troops, right? So, but they get rich. We did a story for you here last week where Bloomberg News reported record profits for the top 5 defense contractors, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop, etc. Record profits, record stock prices. They love this endless war. Well, they paid for it in the form of campaign contributions and salaries to former generals and politicians, and they expect what they paid for. So, now Jack Goldsmith, who's a former Bush Department of Justice lawyer, who is generally in favor of all these wars, even he says, quote, amazingly, there's a very large question, even in the Armed Services Committee, about who the United States is at war against and where and how those determinations are made. So there's a former Bush guy saying, we don't even know who we're at war against. But it doesn't really matter. We've always been at war, okay? And so we have to stay at war, and if we have to invent new enemies like Coruscant, Oh, Khorasan, oh my God. Of course, we gave you the story, also from The Intercept, where they explained that Khorasan is not really the name of any group in Syria. We just kind of made that name up and said, let's call those guys Khorasan and drop some bombs on them, because then we'll say the attack was imminent upon the homeland, and so it'll justify another war, this time going to a different country of Syria. Keep the war machine humming. So now we go back to Leon Panetta. Was Jack Goldsmith right about we don't even know who we're fighting? This is the former CIA director and former Secretary of Defense. The war will have to extend beyond Islamic State to include emerging threats in Nigeria, Somalia, Yemen, Libya, and elsewhere. Okay, so let's think about that for a second. We haven't started those wars yet. Leon Panetta is out of office already, but he's saying, we planned this a long time ago. Believe me, we're still going to go into all those countries. So you like the war in Iraq and Syria? Well, we got a lot more where that came from. And also notice that Libya's on the list. As Greenwald points out, wait a minute, we already fought kind of a war in Libya. We liberated Libya a couple of years back, didn't we? No. Now we have to liberate Libya from the people we liberated it to. It never ends. Okay, and the money keeps going. Well, luckily, the most likely president next time around, according to all the pundits, is Hillary Clinton. Well, she's a Democrat. I hear she's a lifelong liberal. So what's her position on all this? She says the new war is, quote, essential, and the U.S. shies away from fighting it, quote, at our peril. No, we must have more wars. Hillary Clinton wrote a whole book about how she was more hawkish than President Obama, and the only thing she disagreed with President Obama on was more military intervention, more weapons, more wars. Great. Okay. Now, as we're in the middle of this, then we go to current day politics and what's happening now. Well, it turns out we are cutting the overall Pentagon budget for not the first time, but among very rare times, $4 billion. Normally we set a record every year, right? But we cut it by a tiny $4 billion, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars overall, right? Well, everybody's crying foul. But don't worry, they were just kidding. It's actually going to be much larger because of the new war we started with ISIS. That Pentagon budget did not take into account a massive war we have just started in 2 different countries. Now, estimates on that, the Pentagon said military operations against ISIS cost between $7 to $10 million per day. Per day. That's coming out of your pocket. If you're a taxpayer, don't kid yourself. There's no other place it's coming from. It's coming from your pocket. You're paying $7 to $10 million. Where's it going? Largely into the pockets of defense contractors who are making those missiles, the jets, etc. Okay? But, you know, that seems to be a huge underestimate. Of course, it's by the Pentagon. That's not surprising. A new report published Monday, however, by the Center for Strategic and Budgetary Assessments predicts the war's price tag could eventually be $2.4 billion to $22 billion per year. And remember how low the estimates were before the Iraq War, and it turns out we were 100 times higher than the original estimates. So here we go again. But all of this is not enough. The Democrats want endless war. We go to the Republicans, and what does Paul Ryan say? Of course, leader in the House among the Republicans that ran for vice president last time around. He says, talking about Obama's cuts to the Pentagon, the thing that comes to my mind is, why is he proposing a budget to devastate the Pentagon? We have endless wars, and we just started a new one in 2 different countries. Not enough. Why is he devastating the Pentagon? Finally, Greenwald makes an excellent point. He says a state of endless war justifies ever-increasing state power and secrecy and a further erosion of rights. It also entails a massive transfer of public wealth to the homeland security and weapons industry, which the U.S. media deceptively calls the defense sector. When's the last time any of these guys were in Albuquerque? They're not doing any defense. We're perpetually on the offense. And it doesn't really help our cause. In fact, every war we start leads to a whole new war, even bigger and more disastrous. But the defense sector always wins at the end. All right, now, before I leave you, Glenn included a great Adam Smith quote from back in the day, from Book of Wealth of Nations, of course. Now, Adam Smith, guy who wrote about capitalism, beloved by conservatives. Let's see what he thought about this. Okay, he knew this all the way back then. Isn't this amazing? From the 1700s. Listen to this quote. He says, in great empires, the people who live in the capital and in the provinces remote from the scene of action feel, many of them, scarce any inconveniencies from the war, but enjoy at their ease the amusement of reading in the newspapers the exploits of their own fleets and armies. To them, this amusement compensates the small difference between the taxes which they pay on account of the war and those which they had been accustomed to pay in times of peace. They are commonly dissatisfied with the return of peace, which puts an end to their amusement and to 1,000 visionary hopes of conquest and national glory from a longer continuance of the war. There's the financial aspect, and then there's this elitist aspect. Back then, the elites didn't send their kids to war. Guess what? Today, the elites do not send their kids to war. And they've done something to one-up the royalty from back then. They've transferred their taxes more to the average guy. So they don't really feel the pain of that either. They go, more amusement for everybody. Let's continue bombing. Okay. Now, we move to a much lighter topic, although one I think that's in a lot of ways just as important, if not more so. I mean, this is obviously enormously important in terms of policy, but this is important in terms of your life. Let's go to Duck Dynasty. I know, it sounds ridiculous, right? No, but trust me, okay? We got a couple of Duck Dynasty guys in the news. This is going to be relevant to your life because they're going to tell you how to live it. First, we're going to start with Phil Robertson. We got a sermon of his on tape. This ought to be a doozy. He talks about biblical sex.
In matters of, are you ready? Sexuality. The Bible said one man, one woman, that's what I made to begin with. For this reason, we have a male and a female. For that reason, those two can come together and be married. You know what those two will never have? They will never have a sexually transmitted disease. You know why? They keep their sex between the two of them. They can't catch a sexually transmitted disease. Biblically correct sex is safe. It's safe. You're not going to get chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, AIDS if man marries a woman and neither one of you have it and you keep your sex between the two of you. You're not going to get ever a sexually transmitted disease. True or false? Man meets woman, marries her, keeps his sex right there, the children come. The chances of them getting a sexually transmitted disease, would you say is almost zero? You can say it.
You're almost zero. Who's looking forward to, quote, biblically correct sex? Oh, hon, you want to have some biblically correct sex? Ooh, that's hot. I don't think I want the Bible anywhere near me when I'm having sex. I don't want to come biblically correct. All right. Look, he could technically be right. I mean, your chance of getting a transmitted disease, if you only had sex with one person your whole life and they only had sex with you their whole lives, is near zero. Okay. Now, some people will say there's exceptions, yada, yada, but I'll give them that. You've also led a terribly boring life. All right. More from this guy.
You say, why is there so many debilitating, horrible diseases bringing them down all over America and worldwide? Because they say, we're going to follow our orthodox liberal opinion. Just breed anything and anybody. Just have at it. Go for it. Don't be bridled and shackled and live a life of restraint before God Almighty. Don't do that.
I don't know why he has to yell so much. And I don't know why he thinks the Taliban look is in. But anyways, overall, I agree with him. He's right. I say have sex as much as you can in a responsible way and live your life. Have fun. He says don't do that. Only have biblically correct sex. You make the call. I'll take that argument any day. Now, he's not the only member of the Klan who thinks that. I mean, his clan, of course. The Duck Dynasty cousin, Zach Dasher, these guys sound like the Dukes of Hazzard. And then cousin comes over. Okay, anyway, he's running for Congress, believe it or not, in Louisiana. And he's got some interesting theories about Drake and YOLO. Okay, he thinks YOLO's really bad. You guys know what that is? You only live once, right? It's in a rap song, etc. So first he says, don't get me wrong, don't listen to the song. He says, the lyrics are pornographic, so I would not recommend you download it. I love the idea of these guys listening to a rap song for the first time. What is this? All right. Then he says, but the most dangerous part of YOLO is not the porn lyrics, but the clearly atheistic message that has brainwashed a generation. Oh, interesting. I didn't know Drake was, starting from the bottom, then we went all the way to atheism, and I'm going to brainwash you and do it. Okay, I didn't know he had all that agenda. Okay. So he says, but what about messages in its title? Do we only live once? If atheist is correct, then yes, you only live once. You have about 80 years if you're lucky. Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, he says this is very dangerous. Okay, why is that? He says it will lead people to, quote, consume as much as you can, for tomorrow you die. Also sounds pretty right. I mean, I wouldn't consume as much as you can today. You got about 80 years or so. Pace yourself, right? He says, if this is all there is, I have a bit of advice for you. Go get after it. That's what I say. Yeah, that's right. You should live your life. These guys are huge believers in God, right? They keep talking about that. Now, do you think God gave you this life as just a pop quiz? Like, all right, now if you do well here, you'll graduate on to second grade, where then you'll have a real life. And in that real life, it'll be super boring. There'll be no challenges. You'll just sit around on the clowns all day with this Cupid thing or whatever he is, with the wings in the back, but then he does the harp thing. And if you listen to the Bible, the Quran, and all these religious texts, there's always streams of water and grapes and dates and stuff that was around in the Middle East that I guess they liked back then. I don't know, is there any banana cream pie? That sounds terribly boring. Life is not a pop quiz. Maybe God gave you life so you may live it. Interesting. But he doesn't agree. He says, if the historical accounts of Jesus' resurrection are true, anyway, then we have proof that our 80 years here are just the first life. We have proof that there will be a second life. Proof, really. Oh, man. It's going to be over just like that. So it's a bit of a shame. I wish there was like a 5 seconds that I'd pop into their heads like, what now? And then lights out. Yeah, that sounds super scary, doesn't it? But unfortunately, there is no second life. You wasted the one life you had, having biblically correct sex and living a super boring life because you thought there was a sky god testing you. Oh, look, he did that wrong. I shouldn't have done that. Oh, he had fun there. Can't have that. Oh, no. And at the end, what happened? Wow, sick to that. I ruined the one life that I had. Okay, again, I don't happen to believe in the religions, right? But if you believe in God, aren't you cursing him by not living the life he gave you? Even if you think you got 28 lives to go, shouldn't you live the first life that he gave you? Nope. This guy says, but if you can live twice, use your rational ability to plan for that second life. How about you use your rational ability to plan for this life, the one we know exists? All right, he says, folks, the bottom line is this. Drake and Lil Wayne are wrong and Jesus was right. You can live twice. Now you see one of the many reasons why I'm opposed to religion, right? Because they tell people this and people literally waste their lives thinking that there's going to be a whole nother one. I mean, I see kids in all sorts of fundamentalist outfits all, across the country and even in LA. And they wear their hair this way, they wear that hat, they wear this hat, they got things hanging out of their clothes, they got old Russian coats, they got the women wrapped up, etc. And they're just under all those clothes and wrappings, and they're like, oh my God, I can't wait for the second life. God, wouldn't it be great if I had another life? Actually, you do. This one. Take the burqa off, take the old Russian Orthodox Jewish coat off. God is not going to do a fashion show up there. He's not going to be like, oh, you wore the wrong clothes. Sorry, you weren't fierce enough. You go to hell. Just live the life he gave you. So these guys are grossly misleading you. It's not just funny. It's not just, laughs here. It's real, because a lot of people believe that you should hang around waiting for a second life that I think, and a lot of people think, and rational thought leads you to believe, is never going to come. This is the one life we live. This is the one life we know. Have at it, Hoss. Okay. I know, I'm the crazy one. Isn't that funny? What I just told you, I think sounds like the most rational thing in the world. The overwhelming majority of humanity disagrees. They said, nope, we should stick around for a second life. Great. All right, let's move on to the next story. Okay. So there's been a lot of talk of Islam in the last couple of days, and so I wanted to go into the book and see if the people who've been attacking the religion are right about, well, look, if you're an infidel, you should be killed, right? And you should, in fact, be killed for under many different circumstances. Now, I left Islam, so this is fairly easy for me. This is part of the reason I left. So I went back and I found some texts that should really surprise you and shock you, maybe even, if you're not familiar with them, okay? And this is why Islam is so much worse than the other religions, because look at all this stuff that's in the Quran, and if you're going to be a good Muslim, you've got to follow the text of the Quran, okay? Listen to these words. He says, anyone arrogant enough, well, Allah, I guess, arrogant enough to reject the verdict of the judge or of the priest who represents the Lord your God must be put to death. Such evil must be purged. Okay? Now, of course, all these religions talk about the Lord. They are the three religions of the book. Islam calls them people of the book, Jews, Christians, and Muslims. They say you should not let a sorceress live. Well, if you find a sorceress, make sure you kill her, right? Or him. Look at this. They also are against gays. Sam Harris, Bill Maher, etc., talking about this all the time. Muslims are so against gays, and if you're a real liberal, you would be against Islam because of statements like this. If a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them shall be put to death for their abominable deed. They have forfeited their lives. Okay, God, this religion is so violent and nasty. All right, more different ways you can die. A man or a woman who acts as a medium or fortune teller shall be put to death by stoning. God, barbaric, these Muslims. They have no one but themselves to blame for their death. Don't blame me. Don't blame ISIS. Don't blame jihadis. Here's God saying, you got to be stoned to death. You didn't believe what we believe. If you don't believe what we believe, we're going to murder you. We're going to stone you to death. Islam disgusts me. I can't believe this stuff. Okay. More. Of course, 800 ways to die in the Quran, right? If a man commits adultery with another man's wife, both the man and the woman must be put to death. How many times have we had adultery in the United States? What, they'd kill half the country. Jesus, these Muslims. A priest's daughter who loses her honor by committing fornication and thereby dishonors her father also shall be burned to death. Have you ever seen people this barbaric? Okay. Whoever sacrifices to any God, remember, only sacrifice to your God, okay? They say, whoever sacrifices to any God except the Lord alone shall be doomed, of course. More. Suppose you're here in one of the towns the Lord your God is giving you, that some worthless rabble among you have led their fellow citizens astray by encouraging them to worship foreign gods. In such cases, you must examine the facts carefully. Oh, that's good. That's positive. If you find it is true and can prove that such a detestable act has occurred among you, you must attack that town and completely destroy all its inhabitants as well as the livestock. I mean, how vicious are these Muslims? They're going to kill the poor cows. What do the cows ever do to you? But you see, this is where it comes from, the Quran. That's why they want to invade these towns, ISIS does, and kill everybody inside. Ugh, disgusting. Okay. Now, how about your own family members? They wouldn't do that. They're not that bad, are they? If your own full brother or your son or daughter or your beloved wife or your intimate friend entices you secretly to serve other gods, whom you and your fathers have not known, gods of any other nations, near at hand or far away, from one end of the earth to the other, do not yield to him or listen to him, nor look with pity upon him, to spare or shield him, but kill him. That's your sons, your daughters, your brothers. Kill them all. if they listen to a God from another nation, like perhaps America. Kill them all. Okay, wow, these guys are definitely right. This is among the worst books I've ever read. This is a barbaric, detestable God. Okay, one more? Yeah, sure. Cursed be he who does the Lord's work remissly. Cursed he who holds back his sword from blood. If you hold your sword back from blood, if it's not drenched in blood at all times, well, then you're not doing the Lord's work, and you should be cursed. Well, I think we've rested our case here. Islam is worse than any of the other religions. We should be talking about how Muslims always follow the Quran. This stuff is literally in the Quran, so obviously the Muslims are the worst. Have you figured it out yet? It's not the Quran. Every single thing I just read to you is from the Bible. Oops. I'll quickly run through the different texts. The first one was Deuteronomy 17:12. Second one was Exodus 22:17. Third one was Leviticus 20:13. Then Leviticus 20:27. Leviticus 20:10. It's a lovely book, Leviticus. Then 21:9. Exodus 22:19, Deuteronomy 13:13, Deuteronomy 13:13, 13:7, 13:7, and Jeremiah 48:10. Okay. Wow, that stuff's in the Bible. I guess the Christians are the worst religion. I guess all the Christians are guilty. Look, fundamentalist evangelical Protestants say every word in the Bible is literally the Word of God and absolutely correct. That's 32% of Americans. Look, there's polls saying that Americans believe in the Bible literally, and the Bible says shred everyone to pieces who doesn't believe in your Lord and your God. Christians are the worst. I think we can agree. Or perhaps all the religions are ridiculous. They were written by barbaric people thousands of years ago. And by the way, most of this is in the Old Testament and hence applies to Judaism as well. In the first 5 books, that's basically your Torah. So, and yes, are there quotes like this in the Quran? Absolutely. All 3 books are based on ancient myths. And in the old days, what did they do? They slaughtered each other to pieces. Yeah, they'd go into a town and kill everybody, and they'd kill the cows too. We shouldn't listen to that anymore. Is Islam worse than these two? Well, I mean, how much worse could it be than killing your sons and your daughters and your brothers and everyone else that's living who dares to disagree with your religion? Of course, it's in the application, right? But all 3 of these books have been applied disastrously throughout time and continue to be applied disastrously. The Christians believe, by the way, in the New Testament about revelations that tell us that Jesus is going to come back. By the way, the Muslims also believe Jesus is going to come back, not Muhammad, Jesus, okay? They believe that Jesus is going to come back and kill almost everybody on the earth. And evangelical Christians, again, a third of our country, think that's awesome. They can't wait for it. They plan for it. They talk about how Jesus is going to vacuum up them into the sky because it's in the book, it's in the book, it's in the book, right? And all the rest of us are going to be a bloodbath, probably the cows as well. And they can't wait for it. That's why they don't want peace in the Middle East. They want the Holy Land, Judea, Samaria, to be under the control of the Jews so that they can rebuild the temple so that everyone can die. You tell me the Muslims are dangerous? I agree with you. Some radical Muslims are terribly dangerous. Some fundamentalist Christians actively planning towards Armageddon and influencing the largest military ever built by mankind, the U.S. military, starting wars all over the Middle East, also very dangerous. And also Jewish settlers saying, nope, Judea and Samaria is mine. I don't ever want peace with the Palestinians. In the worst possible place on earth in terms of starting conflict. Turns out maybe all 3 are wrong. Put some thought behind it. And by the way, if you're ever unsure, please pick up a copy of your religious text and read it. Read the Bible, you won't stay Christian for long. Young Turks.
That was a segment from hour 1 of the show.
Now for the better hour, the second hour.
Drums. You can get the whole show on TYT-network.com.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Mid-century girl says, listen to Anna when it comes to orgy etiquette. I don't remember exactly what you said about orgy etiquette, but I'm going to have to put some thoughts behind that.
Did I say anything about orgy etiquette?
During the Peterson story, you must have.
Maybe, okay.
All right, we'll rewind the tape to
I mean,
figure
you
it out.
probably shouldn't take my advice. I've never been in an orgy, and I don't know what the etiquette is.
Yeah. Can't say the same. All right, maybe that's another story for the post.
You've never been in an orgy.
Oh, I haven't? Okay. Can Cenk go more than 2 days without mentioning 1970s key parties? TYT Drawing Room wrote that in. You know, you're right. I do like to say it because I find it so absurd. Like, I believe that it's only happened 7 times. And then it got written up somewhere, and then everybody thinks that it happened everywhere. But I find it like, really? Their neighbors went by and they just fucked each other's wives?
Sounds like you've been in a lot of orgies.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm sorry, because I was born in 1980. Is this like you go to a big room and you have a key around your neck and it has a lock and you're supposed to fuck the person who works on it?
No. That's really funny. No, a bunch of people from the neighborhood or friends or whatever go into a room full of like velvet or polyester or whatever was going on in the 70s. And they all throw their house keys or car keys into a bowl. And the wives go like this and pick one of the keys. And they're like, oh, whose house key is that? Oh, it's Bob's. Okay, so they go to a room and they keep doing that until they're all paired off with other people. Isn't that crazy?
I'm sure it's happened several times.
7 times.
Maybe.
Okay, I'm going to pull a Mankiewicz. It's happened 7 times in American history. Okay. Let me go forward here. Michelle says, my 6-year-old asked me yesterday if she could marry herself. But that's because she said she, quote, can't get anyone prettier than her. She said, oh. Actually, it's slightly obnoxious, but that's okay. It's a 6-year-old. We love her for it.
I'm glad your 6-year-old has a very healthy image of herself.
Yeah, I tell my 4-year-old that he's the champion of the world every day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Maximus. He's like, what's it lot?
Yeah. No, these are all good things, but at about 17, Cenk's going to have to deprogram that. He's going to have to get in a fight with his son. And then this woman is going to have to tell her daughter, hey, listen, just calm down. None of the boys like you because of how you're being.
That's true.
It's not right. Michelle, you do you, okay? Okay, don't listen to Jared. I'm amused by Randy Bongson's email here. I would be so pissed, he wrote it out, if I got talked into going to a one-person marriage. Combining marriage with a one-man show? Shoot me now. All right, I'll read one last one. Big Doc, why do we have to celebrate every damn thing? I take a shit today. Can I have a cookie? Just keep it moving. All right, here we go. Member shout-outs. Jeffrey Lacasse, member number 2780. And member number 3087 is Orlando Ornelas. So Orlando and Jeffrey, you guys are awesome. Or maybe Orneas. All right, meetups happening in Eugene, Orlando, Denver, Chicago, Tampa, New Orleans, North Carolina. Go to tytworld.com to find that out, how to go to those. Now, you know that you got to send us your Squarespace website so we can judge it on Friday. We have like the most beautiful one coming up or something. Maybe
No,
Michelle's
we already
daughter.
did the most beautiful
Oh,
one.
we did. Oh, that's right. That's
We
right.
did last week.
The band one, right? I like that band.
No. The most beautiful website was the drinking game. No. It was the band one. You're right. And then we did the TYT drinking game website as well.
That's
which is
right.
awesome.
So everybody participate in that. Squarespace.com/TYT. Promo code's TYT, obviously. And then send it to us through Twitter at #TYTSQSP. Okay? Forward.
All right. The first person in Spain has been diagnosed with Ebola, and she is actually a nurse who is treating an elderly priest who had just recently visited West Africa. Now, that nurse had a dog, and authorities wanted to euthanize that dog because they were concerned that the dog had Ebola that would then spread. Now, interestingly enough, this led to a huge outcry, and there was a Change.org petition asking or demanding that the dog be saved and quarantined as opposed to euthanized. Now, I should note that the dog has been euthanized, okay? That's the update to the story. He was euthanized today. However, I want to tell you a little more about the petition because I found it really fascinating. So according to reports, while Excalibur's, that's the name of the dog, petition has more than 350,000 supporters, okay? At the time of the writing, the nearest petition relating to human sufferers of the virus, calling for vaccine research to be fast-tracked, has half that number.
That's so depressing. So it was 300,000 when they were writing that article.
Yeah.
Before we came on air, it's 350,000. But this is the principal point I make all the time. I'm for the humans. This is madness. This is insanity.
I'm a huge dog lover, okay? Huge dog lover. But I'm also logical. And if you have a dog that has Ebola that could possibly spread it to human beings and kill them, then you have to euthanize the dog. I'm sorry.
It's a no-brainer. You guys are nuts. I mean, there's two nuts angles to this story. You gotta put them down. You can't risk it. I mean, bodily fluids is how Ebola is spread, right? The dog's got a lot of bodily fluids. You know, he's slobbering all over the place. You're gonna quarantine him and blah 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 blah. But then you're exposing the person who's dealing with the dog every day. And what if he gets it or she gets it? And then they go home to their family. It's a terrible idea. Look, nobody looks at that dog unless they're sick and thinks that they're looking forward to killing it, right? Everybody's broken up about it. It's a super cute dog. We get it. Everybody loves dogs. Look at that guy. I mean, it makes you sick that they're going to have to put him down. But you know, a lot of people have died from Ebola. Over 3,000 people have died from Ebola. And to have only half the signatures to help the humans, but have all these signatures to help the dog, that's the second part of it, man. People care more about dogs than they do about other people. They do, and the numbers prove it. I want to give you those numbers, okay?
So just to give you a sense of, similar petitions, the Excalibur petition was posted on Tuesday, right? And it got 350,000 people to sign it. The petition calling for a focus on research that could save thousands of lives was posted 2 months ago. And it still only had half the number of signatures, which is insane.
It was posted on Tuesday. We're recording the show on Wednesday. It got 350,000 signatures like that.
Immediately. Okay, so some more data for you. Data from the National Council for Voluntary Organizations shows that animal charities get more donations from the British public than charities for the disabled, homeless, and the elderly. Now, I should note that charities that involve children get more donations than charities that involve animals. Okay?
So the reason is people are obsessed with the innocent, right? And I get it. Kids are innocent, dogs are innocent, humans are bad, terrible people. Who knows what they did, right? Oh, you're an adult. I don't know, man. Maybe you had it coming, right? I mean, you think that's callous, but that's how people think. Whereas they see a cute dog like that, what am I going to do? I gotta save the dog. Damn it, save people first, man. I'm not against dogs, obviously, but have some common sense. So everybody feels bad, but they did the right thing here. Of course they put it down.
If it's a public safety concern, you have to do it. I mean, we have a policy here in the United States where if a dog, brutalizes a person, attacks a person, we euthanize them because it's a public safety concern, okay?
And the people that drive me crazy, oh, that's the first time he's ripped somebody's face off. Yeah, I'm not going to risk a second time, right? Oh, but he's an innocent dog. I know he didn't mean it. He's a fucking dog. I know that, right? But he's also a fucking dog, and so he doesn't know what he's doing. So he might rip somebody else's face off. Now, people think that they're your kids. They're not your kids. They're not humans. They're not humans. I hate to break it to you. I know you think that they, are, like, literally, you think they're your children, but they're not.
For a lot of people, though, a dog is a family member. You know what I mean? And I know that you can't consider a dog the equivalent of a human life, but still, I mean, there's a significant amount of emotional attachment that people have with their pets. So I can understand it. But at the same time, regardless of how much you love animals, you have to use some common sense, especially when that animal poses a public health concern.
I have a cat now. If it had 1% chance of hurting my kids in any substantial way. All right, I'll leave it right there.
Okay. All right. Oftentimes on this show, we have very positive coverage when it comes to marijuana legalization. So a few of our viewers were concerned when a new study came up indicating that cannabis use could have some negative consequences, okay? And I think it's only fair that we cover that story as well. Now, this is regarding a 20-year study that was published in the scientific journal Addiction. And the reason why this is a very relevant study is because obviously it's a long-term study. It started in the early 1990s. And what they wanted to look at is whether or not there's been any type of changes in the type of marijuana and whether or not it has negative or adverse health consequences for people who smoke it regularly. Now, first of all, let me note that the majority majority of studies that were done on marijuana that were credible happened in the 1970s. And two things have changed since then. Okay, so I'm going to tell you those two things. Recreational cannabis use has become almost as common as tobacco use among adolescents and young adults, which means there are simply more weed smokers to study. So that's relevant. And also, today's weed is about 4 times as strong as it was 30 years ago.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me.
Well, a lot of people say like, "Oh, I remember the good stuff back in the day," like because they have nostalgia for the good times they had in the past. Well, it turns out, no, the good stuff's today. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't have much experience in it, so I'm sure some experts would know better as to what the good shit is.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I don't have much experience in it either from the 70s, so I can't really tell. Yeah. But anyway, so what's interesting is, some people have emailed this story in and they're like, see what it says? Marijuana's bad. But actually, the study hasn't told me anything that we didn't already know. Let me break it down. So the research still shows that you can't overdose on cannabis. In 1993, the evidence indicated that the risk of a fatal overdose from using cannabis was extremely small. That's still true. The amount of marijuana required to trigger an overdose is somewhere between 15 and 70 grams, which is a far greater amount of cannabis that even a very heavy cannabis user could use in a day. Okay, so we already knew that. You can't overdose from marijuana. That's the positive finding from this 20-year study.
Okay, so far I haven't seen the downside at all. We got better weed today. Okay.
Well, okay, so the downside, again, is something that we already knew, all right? A meta-analysis found that recent cannabis use indicated by THC in blood or self-reported cannabis use doubled the risk of a car crash. Basically, if you're smoking weed and getting behind the wheel, it's a really bad idea.
Who didn't know that?
We already knew that.
Okay, all right. Okay. Wow, you got him.
So here's the, I guess, relevant finding that I think is important, and we have talked about this on the show before. They talked about whether or not marijuana is addictive, okay? Mm-hmm. So there's a difference between dependence and a chemical addiction. Marijuana is not something that you'll get a chemical addiction from, but if you're smoking it every day, it could happen that you become dependent on it. So the study says 1 in 6 people who start using cannabis regularly in adolescence develops a dependency, compared with around 1 in 10 who start using it as adults, okay? And then they also talked a little bit about what marijuana could do to your IQ if you start smoking it at a younger age.
Higher, right? Higher. I'm going to guess higher. No?
Again, this is something that we talked about. If you're young, if you're an adolescent smoking marijuana, it could have negative impacts on your learning skills, or your learning abilities, I should say. Increasingly sophisticated studies since 1993 have consistently found deficits in verbal learning, memory, and attention in regular cannabis users. These effects on IQ were found only in the small proportion of cannabis users who initiated in adolescence and persisted in daily use throughout their 20s and into their 30s.
Yeah, those are known as potheads. Okay. All right, so look, does it have some downsides? Come on, dudes. Of course, right? So you shouldn't drive with it. It's not a good idea. Normally, we've seen a lot of anecdotal stories about how the pot drivers are driving too slow, not too fast. They're like, dude, how fast was I going? 75, 90, no, 15. You were going 15, right? But that's still dangerous, right?
Yes,
it's still a bad idea. And, I'm not convinced that it's not going to lead to cancer, right? In terms of if you over smoke it.
Lung cancer,
Lung cancer, right? And so, but the rest of the nonsense with the tobacco, it's now as much as tobacco because people are smoking less tobacco and they're smoking more weed. And if the weed isn't bad for you, then who cares if they're smoking more of it, right?
And regardless of what the findings of that study would be, right? It's not going to change my ideology on drug policy. I want to legalize everything, right? And the reason why I want to legalize it is because I want people who use drugs, or abuse drugs, I should say, to get rehabilitated. I don't want to criminalize them, okay? So for those who send me that story and they're like, see? No, the war on drugs has been a complete and utter failure. This is not enough evidence for me to change my mind. I'm in favor of legalizing heroin. Again, because I want to help these people who use it, not because I want to do it, and not because I think it's a good idea for someone to do it.
Yeah. You see, where they legalize it, the rates, usage rates go down. They don't go up. Okay, so get your facts straight. And to give you a sense of what a dork I am, when I was younger, the reason a lot of people think I didn't drink because they're like, oh, religious beliefs or something. No. I had read a study that when I was a kid, high school some point, that alcohol lowers your IQ if you drink too much alcohol. So I was like, oh my God, I don't want to touch my precious IQ. So that's why I didn't drink, and I didn't smoke pot.
Yeah.
So if you say, hey, don't have your kids do any of that stuff till they're older, 18, whatever, right? Good luck, first of all. But great, no problem, right? But you can occasionally smoke pot when you're an adult. Have at it, Hoss. All these studies don't show enough of a downside to even make a dent. And there's all those studies that show actually an upside.
Yeah.
Plus, you get high. Like, people always discount that, like it's no big deal. Like that, but that, we shouldn't take that into account, okay? But that's why we do it, to get high. Of course you should take that into account. It's okay to have a good time.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
I just randomly remembered the one kind of ridiculous story we did. It was true. It was based on scientific research, but it was a study that showed that smoking marijuana regularly increased lung capacity. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I reported that story, like, come on. Yeah, your reaction was the best.
Yeah, it's too many bullshit good stories. Okay, we're the most fair and balanced news organization in the world. Okay,
yeah.
We probably shouldn't use that slogan. Okay, and the other way of looking at it is I had too few IQ points to give up any. That's why I was concerned. Anyways, let's take a quick break. We'll come right back.
You liked that, didn't you?
All right. If you want the whole show, you like it even more, go to TYTnetwork.com. Go under member options, and you can get the whole show anytime you like.